Video game movies used to be a joke. For decades, players watched their favorite worlds fall apart on the big screen, ruined by cheap effects and bad writing. But then a French animation studio and a gaming giant decided to break the rules. They spent 6 years and $250 million to create something that wasn't just a good adaptation, but a masterpiece of animation. This is the story of Arcane, the show that finally killed the video game curse and changed the entire industry forever. To understand why Arcane matters, you have to look at the wreckage that came before it. The history of video game adaptations is littered with disasters. From the bizarre Super Mario Bros. Movie in 1993 to Uwe Boll's tax write-off films, Hollywood just didn't get it. They took complex interactive worlds and stripped them down to basic action flicks. The problem was always the same. Studios viewed games as toys for children, not serious source material. They hired directors who had never played the games, and writers who ignored the lore. Fans were left disappointed time and time again. By 2020, the general consensus was clear. Good video game movies were impossible. The medium was just too different. And then, Riot Games decided to prove everyone wrong. Riot Games wasn't a movie studio. They were the creators of League of Legends, one of the most popular competitive games on Earth. But the lore of their game was a mess. It started as a thin wrapper for fighting, with barely any coherent story. Over the years, they rebuilt their world, Runeterra, through short stories and character bios. But they wanted more. They didn't want to license their world to Netflix or Disney and let someone else ruin it. They wanted full creative control, so they made a choice that sounded insane at the time. Instead of hiring a Hollywood veteran to run the show, they trusted their own creative developers, Christian Linke and Alex Yee. These were guys who loved the game, not executives looking for a quick cash grab. The secret weapon behind Arcane was a small animation studio in Paris called Fortiche. Riot had worked with them before on short music videos like Get Jinxed, and fans loved the style. It wasn't the clean, plastic look of Pixar or DreamWorks. It was gritty, dirty, and artistic. When Riot pitched the idea of a full series, Fortiche was hesitant. They were a boutique team, not a TV factory, but they agreed to scale up. Their technique involves mixing 3D models with 2D hand-painted textures. Every background looks like an oil painting. Every frame has brushstrokes. This manual process takes forever, but the result is a show that looks like concept art come to life. It gave Arcane a visual identity that no other show on television could match. Quality costs money. A lot of money. Reports confirmed that the 2 seasons of Arcane cost a combined $250 million to produce and promote. That makes it the most expensive animated series in history. For comparison, a typical anime season might cost a fraction of that. Where did the money go? It went into time. The first season took 6 years to make. Animators weren't rushed to meet a yearly quota. They polished every movement, every facial expression, and every lighting effect until it was perfect. Riot Games footed the bill themselves, treating the show not just as a product, but as a gift to their players. It was a massive financial risk. If the show failed, they would have burned $250 million. The smartest decision the writers made was to ignore the big picture at first. League of Legends has dragons, space gods, and world-ending threats. Arcane ignored all of that. Instead, it focused on 2 sisters living in a slum, Vi and Powder. By grounding the story in a broken family relationship, they made it accessible to everyone. You didn't need to know what a nexus or a lane was. You just needed to understand the pain of losing your family. The transformation of innocent Powder into the chaotic Jinx is a tragedy that rivals Shakespeare. It felt real. The show wasn't about cool powers. It was about how trauma shapes people. This emotional core hooked millions of viewers who had never played a single match of League of Legends. Most cartoons rely heavily on dialogue to explain the plot. Arcane let the visuals do the talking. There are entire sequences with no spoken words, where the story is told through character acting and lighting. Look at the scene where Jinx lights the flare in Season 1. The red smoke, the music, the desperate look on her face. It communicates everything, without a single line of exposition. The animators at Fortiche studied live-action cinema, not just other cartoons. They used camera shakes, rack focus, and lens flares to make the world feel physical and grounded. It treated the audience with respect, trusting them to follow the visual cues. Instead of having characters explain their feelings every 5 minutes, music in Arcane isn't just background noise. It's a central character. Riot Games has always been a music company disguised as a game studio, and they flex that muscle here. The theme song Enemy by Imagine Dragons became a global hit, but the original score is where the real magic happened. Each major scene was edited to the beat of the music. The fight scenes feel like music videos, with punches landing on the snare hits. In Season 2, the soundtrack evolved even further, bringing in a diverse range of artists to represent the chaotic energy of Zaun and the polished elitism of Piltover. The sound design added weight to every punch and explosion, making the animation feel heavy and dangerous. When Season 1 launched in 2021, Riot rewrote the marketing playbook. They didn't just buy billboards, they utilized their biggest asset, the players. They allowed Twitch streamers to co-stream the first episode, meaning they could watch it live with their audiences. Suddenly, millions of people were watching the premiere together across thousands of channels. It created an instant global event. They also flooded other games with Arcane crossovers. Fortnite, PUBG, Among Us. You couldn't escape Jinx. This strategy turned a Netflix show into a cultural moment. By the time the first episode ended, the buzz was so loud that even non-gamers felt like they were missing out if they didn't watch. The result of all this effort was undeniable. Season 1 didn't get good reviews, it got perfect ones. It held a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It became the first streaming show ever to win the Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program, beating out titans like The Simpsons and Rick and Morty. It also swept the Annie Awards, winning 9 out of 9 categories it was nominated for. Critics praised it for proving that animation could be serious, adult drama without relying on crude humor or shock value. It validated the feelings of millions of League players who had loved these characters for a decade. Finally, the world saw what they saw. After the massive cliffhanger of Season 1, fans expected a quick follow-up. They didn't get one. Riot and Fortiche went dark for 3 long years. In an era where content is churned out like fast food, this delay was painful, but it was necessary. The creators refused to rush the conclusion. They knew the second season had to be even bigger, with more complex animation and a darker story. During this gap, the legend of Arcane only grew. New fans discovered the show on Netflix, and the anticipation for the finale built to a fever pitch. By the time November 2024 finally arrived, the pressure on the studio was immense. They had to stick the landing. Season 2 dropped in late 2024, and it didn't hold back. It was marketed as the final chapter of the Arcane saga, a bold move when most successful shows try to run forever. The animation had noticeably improved, with more intricate fight choreography and even more experimental visual styles. The story pushed the conflict between Piltover and Zaun to a breaking point. While some fans debated the pacing of the ending, the emotional payoff for Vi and Jinx was devastating and beautiful. It topped the Netflix charts in over 60 countries immediately. It proved that the first season wasn't a fluke. Arcane was a complete, cohesive work of art from start to finish. Now, looking back at the 2025 awards season, History repeated itself. Arcane once again claimed the Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program, securing its place as one of the most decorated animated series of all time. It wasn't just a win for Netflix. It was a win for the medium. The show demonstrated that you could spend movie-level budgets on a TV series and get a return on investment through cultural impact and brand loyalty. The critical acclaim for the final season solidified its status. It sits alongside shows like Breaking Bad or The Wire, series that knew exactly when to end and didn't overstay their welcome. The success of Arcane sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Suddenly, every game studio wanted their own Arcane. We saw the rise of high-quality adaptations like Fallout and The Last of Us, which followed the same principles. Respect the source material and hire people who care. But Arcane did something unique for animation specifically. It proved that Western animation could compete with anime in terms of serious storytelling. It showed that adults would watch cartoons if the writing was good enough. The animation ghetto that treated the medium as a genre for kids was finally starting to crumble, and Arcane was holding the sledgehammer. Arcane is over, but Riot Games is just getting started. They've confirmed that more animated projects are in the works, set in different regions of their world, like the militaristic empire of Noxus or the peaceful lands of Ionia. They are also developing a live-action film and more series. The success of Arcane gave them the confidence to build a cinematic universe that could rival Marvel, but the challenge remains. Can they replicate the magic without the specific relationship of Vi and Jinx? Can they find another partner as perfect as Fortiche? The bar has been set incredibly high, and anything less than perfection will now feel like a failure. We can't ignore what the show did for the game itself. When Arcane aired, the pick rates for Jinx, Vi, Jace, and Victor skyrocketed in League of Legends. People who hadn't played in years logged back in. New players downloaded the game just to see the characters they loved on screen. It created a feedback loop where the show fed the game, and the game fed the show. Riot released skins, events, and map updates themed around the series. It proved that a game adaptation is the ultimate marketing tool. It didn't just sell tickets. It revitalized a 15-year-old game and gave it a second life. Ultimately, the secret behind Arcane's success wasn't the budget or the technology. It was passion. The showrunners were game developers, not Hollywood producers. The animators were artists, not technicians. They cared about every frame because they loved the world they were building. Hollywood spent decades trying to turn video games into cash cows, and they failed. Because they lacked soul. Riot Games showed that if you respect your audience and pour your heart into the work, the money will follow. Arcane didn't just break the video game curse. It buried it, leaving a legacy that will be studied for decades to come. Arcane was a lightning-in-a-bottle moment. It was a perfect storm of talent, budget, and creative freedom that we might never see again in exactly the same way. But it proved that stories from video games are just as powerful as novels or comic books. As we move forward into 2026 and beyond, we can expect more amazing adaptations. But Arcane will always be the one that started the revolution. It was the moment gamers looked at the screen and finally said, "Yes, that is our world." And it was beautiful.